Happy Wednesday, everyone. Well, not if you're Whoopi Goldberg, AKA Karen Johnson. Yeah, who knew Whoopi was a Karen? I thought that was only for white people, like Toyota Priuses and skiing. Roll it, Francis.
Good morning and welcome to The View. You all saw the news. Whoopi will be back here in 2 weeks. Okay?
So cute when one of their side gets punished. They sulk like they ran out of raw cookie dough in the Greek.
Whoopi Goldberg just delivered a meltdown so operatic it deserves its own slot on Lifetime Q. The slow piano, dim lighting, and confused close-ups. What caused the dramatic descent? Greg Gutfeld, of course, whose savage roast cut so deep, it left Whoopi's ego fleeing the scene like it was in witness protection. If you thought daytime TV couldn't get more absurd, wait until you see Whoopi crumble faster than her last attempted punchline. Strap in, this spectacle makes a Real Housewives reunion look like a Tea Party.
Whoopi for 2 weeks because she said the Holocaust had nothing to do with race. She said this on a show called The View, which makes everything about race. Except now.
The Holocaust isn't about race. No, it's not about race.
It's about a different race.
But it's not about race. It's not about race.
What is it about?
Because it's about man's inhumanity to man.
Yeah, that's heroically stupid. Even for The View.
It wasn't a slip, it was a spiral. One moment Whoopi was sermonizing from her faux leather throne on The View. The next she was unraveling like a discount sweater in a spin cycle. The catalyst, Greg Gutfeld, the sarcastic gremlin of Fox News whose comedic arsenal burns hotter than a flamethrower in a library of feelings. His punchlines don't just land, they explode. And Whoopi. She combusted on live television with the grace of a toddler denied a toy.
The View, otherwise known as Hell's DMV, Whoopi Goldberg asked how much different are the values of the Trump administration from the Taliban.
We have a leader who has repeatedly demeaned women, who wants to defund organizations that benefit women, calling on the media to shut up, specifically wants to give preferential treatment based on...
Not kid ourselves. This collapse has been in the works longer than an over-budget sequel. Whoopi's been coasting toward this emotional pothole like it was a five-star resort. Once pitched as a lively forum of diverse voices, The View has mutated into the televised equivalent of 5 malfunctioning smart speakers squabbling over whose moral outrage is most fashionable. Leading this sanctimonious symphony with all the subtlety of a tambourine in a string quartet is Whoopi, who's convinced that shouting louder makes her the voice of reason.
Talk about groundbreaking to actually hear a celebrity say something mean about the Taliban. How dare they compare them to Trump? The Taliban should sue because they ran out of Hitler analogies. So as they bash the president, I'm reminded how entertainers rarely express any rage over any strand of misogynist Islamism. If they did, we might take their rage toward Trump seriously. A reminder, the Taliban throw acid in girls' faces for going to school. Yeah, I guess that's like defunding Planned Parenthood. Radical Islam is all for killing gays, and I guess that's the same as making some rude jokes. No, Trump's past rudeness is a product of a rude culture, one fed and fattened by a coarse entertainment industry.
So picture the panic when Gutfeld, armed with satire and that trademark smirk, decided to fire back. His rebuttal wasn't just cutting, it was seismic, and Whoopi, she responded with all the composure of a wet tissue. Theatrics ensued. Dramatic sighs, incredulous stares, and the unmistakable expression of someone completely baffled that their status as daytime oracle was, for once, being questioned.
Canada, apparently they're throwing tariffs on manatee meat and bovine semen, which means The View is very unhappy. Oh. Sausage maker Johnsonville is recalling more than 42,000 pounds of pork sausage for possible contamination with plastic fibers. Fortunately, authorities were able to track all 42,000 pounds to a single location in New York City.
This wasn't your average roast, it was a full-blown intellectual evisceration. Gutfeld didn't mock her personally. He dismantled her arguments with surgical precision. While Whoopi rambled on about whichever trending cause had her attention that week, Gutfeld exposed the logic holes in her monologue like a fishmonger filleting a bloated trout. Instead of responding with substance, Whoopi defaulted to her usual playbook, melodrama. It's her signature grandstanding, masquerading as gravitas. When challenged, she doesn't engage. She performs. The View, once a platform for spirited debate, now feels more like an ideological petting zoo where everyone agrees, nods, and avoids sudden movements that might rupture the groupthink bubble. 6 dissent is treated like an act of aggression. Interrupt the smug consensus, and you're immediately gaslit, sidelined, or gently ushered out of frame. It's less a discussion and more a live-action Twitter dogpile. So when Gutfeld entered the chat, metaphorically speaking, he didn't just toss shade, he dropped truth bombs into a castle built of outrage and self-importance. Whoopi mid-rant suddenly looked like someone who'd wandered into a logic lecture by mistake. Her reaction, iconic. First came the frozen hysterical parts of offense and disbelief, then the world-weary sigh, delivered as if she alone bore the burden of moral enlightenment.
But who's the dumbest one of all? True, none of them are in Mensa, but who's the most densa? Perhaps it's Sunny who mastered the art of making idiots look smart. Now The View could ask a mirror who's the dumbest one of all, but there's no way that glass doesn't shatter. So instead, let's check out this clip from Monday's episode of The View when the ladies put their science caps on and discuss the soul.
The disintegration, a breathless flood of half-baked references, emotional gymnastics, and interpretive despair. Somewhere, a producer was desperately reaching for the commercial break button. 7 The twist. Gutfeld barely had to lift a finger. All he did was reflect their own nonsense back at them. What did the mirror show? A show addicted to outrage, a host who equates volume with validity, and a panel so allergic to differing views.
The rapture is here. Rapture's here, and then also I learned that cicadas are coming.
Cicadas.
Cicadas.
Although I love
for the first time in like
No,
100 years,
no.
for the first time in many years.
No,
And so-
every 17 years this happens.
Well, that's not what I read, but maybe maybe you know better. All those things together would maybe lead one to believe that either climate change exists or something is returning.
Earthquakes are not at the mercy of climate change. It's underground. It can't.
It happens, and the eclipse, they've known about the eclipse coming because eclipses happen, and they actually can say when these things are going to happen.
Amazing. That's not what I read. The true sign of the apocalypse is someone that dumb has a law degree. Worse, if your name has the word sun in it, there's no excuse for not knowing how an eclipse works. But it's no surprise that Joy is the one who understands science. She's been on the science diet for years.
They break out in ideological hives at the first whiff of dissent. While Whoopi grasped for her crumbling credibility, her co-hosts launched into full crisis modes, smiling, nodding, and muttering platitudes like backup singers in a bad musical. Joy Behar looked like she'd just realized gravity existed. Sunny Hostin tried to word salad her way to safety. Together, they formed the Cirque du Solidarity, spinning Gutfeld's critique into an attack on all women, all hosts, and some people with inspirational quote mugs. 8 But outside that,
Austin's obsession with race gets thrown back in her face. Today's video comes to us from Sunny Hostin. Sounds like a town. We're in Sunny Hostin. She was on PBS's Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry. For context, Sunny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from...
no one was buying the performance. The internet erupted with memes, TikToks, and remixes so fast it felt like a cultural flash flood. Whoopi's meltdown became the punchline of the week, slowed down, subtitled, and replayed with violins and dramatic voiceovers. What made it worse was the predictability. This wasn't a one-off. This was just the latest episode in Whoopi's long-running series, when arrogance meets reality. Every time someone pushes back, she acts like it's the first time anyone's ever dared question her since 1993. It's almost impressive being that confidently wrong, that consistently
Whoopi claims Biden's loose bowels should make voters throw in the towels. Goldberg's rational so weak she doesn't care if Biden can't speak. Yes, it's a magical land where little Debbies make big bellies and brain cells go to die. This week on The View, Whoopi doubled down on her support of Joe Biden's re-election. No surprise, but it was her peculiar poo-powered prose that piqued my potty predilection. Roll it!
I don't care if he's pooped his pants, I don't care if he can't put a sentence
He
together.
walked away like a man who just argued, with his GPS and won. No chest beating, no theatrics. Just a smirk, a quip, and back to business. That, perhaps, is what stung most his composure. Whoopi showed up to a debate with emotion. Gutfeld brought logic. By the end, her bravado was gone, replaced with a haunted look, suggesting the terrifying prospect of self-reflection. But not to worry. By the next day, the righteous fury had returned introspection, replaced with indignation, because that's how The View survives, not by learning or growing, but by spinning the same emotional hamster wheel and calling it conversation.
He his pants, and in fact, she'll stand right behind him. Not only does she have a terrible case of Trump derangement, she also has no sense of smell or a really weird fetish. And I'm not one to kink shame, to each his own. I guess you just got tired of Joy's crap. Kat, you know what was the most interesting thing about this was the audience reaction. Like when she started talking about poop being everywhere, the audience was like frozen. They were like, oh, I don't, what is going on here? Whoopi has a poop problem.
What does she mean she has poopy days?
She has poopy days.
So what's the moral of this saga? That unchecked egos eventually implode under the weight of the simplest critique. Possibly that Greg Gutfeld, for all his mischief, is one of the few willing to poke the hornet's nest. Absolutely. And Whoopi, instead of collapsing into another Emmy-worthy breakdown, maybe she should consider breaking out of the bubble. The self-importance, and the belief that her opinions are beyond satire. But then again, what would daytime TV be without The View's sacred ritual of uninformed bluster and performative grievance?
Studies are married white women, and they do fall in line with what their husbands are doing.
Is people have to wonder, where does Sunny Hostin get her opinions? Like you said, it's obviously from her husband. She has to tell her what to say in The View, because without it, she's got nothing up there. She's not very bright. So, but the problem with her is that she went full.
Feld, to his credit, doesn't need a chorus of nodding bobbleheads to validate his points. He doesn't need to cry on cue or wave the victimhood flag. He dismantles hypocrisy with punchlines sharper than Joy Behar's haircut, and it works because comedy, when done right, makes bitter truths palatable. Meanwhile, on The View, every disagreement is framed as a moral assault. Try challenging them, and suddenly, you're the villain in a 5-part docuseries.
Sunny Hostin, who thinks climate change caused the solar eclipse, the dumbest of them all. Because everyone knows the moon caused the eclipse, which is controlled by The View's gravitational pull. All right, Kat, did you ever see such a group? It's amazing how Joy and Whoopi became the smart ones.
For me, the most shocking thing about the conversation was how truly boring.
Not chasing truth, they're chasing clapter. That smug applause that follows virtue-signaling statements like, I don't like Trump, groundbreaking stuff. 12 Let's Talk ratings. The View thrives on feelings, but Nielsen doesn't lie. Online, Gutfeld's takedown was celebrated with memes, applause, and digital confetti. Whoopi clutched pearls. Greg claimed comedy gold. Meanwhile, the rest of the table followed suit. Sunny delivered her signature earl of doom. Navarro emitted theatrical sighs, and Joy blinked and muttered, which is just Joy being Joy. Eventually, they'll recover. But for now, let's thank them. Without The View, we wouldn't know what happens when arrogance, delusion, and sanctimony try to host a talk show. Their blooper reel is unintentional comedy at its finest, and Whoopi, if her ego gets any bigger, it may apply for its own SAG card. Please, keep going. America needs the laughs.